Yes, indeed. I am your host. I am Kev Baker, and I am live with you for the next 2 hours of live radio, coming to you from Smart City, Glasgow, in the heartland of Scotland, and we're going all the way around the world. We've got listeners in Australia. We go back up to Alaska. We've got Sid and his mum in Norway. We've got the Gherkins in Poland, and we've even got people in Nebraska. And we've got everyone everywhere in between as well. So wherever you are, whenever you are, a massive warm welcome to what is going to be an absolutely barnstorming week of shows right here on KBS. And we're kicking it off in style. Yes, indeed. So then, with that said, today we're kicking off this amazing week of shows. To give you an example, tomorrow night, we've got Nano Girl. I've already filled you in on what's happening Wednesday with Jimmy and Don. And on Thursday, myself and Scott Lopez will set the world straight. Yes, Scotty comes on every Thursday and he purges 1 week of nonsense out of his system during the show. It's always fun. There's sometimes woo. It's very, very controversial at times as well. So you might be really, really looking forward to this Thursday. But tonight, we've got one of my favourites. And I know he's one of your favourites as well. And it's Ben Emlyn-Jones. And synchronicity, because I found Ben on another show here on Truth Frequency Radio, Enemy Within, with Tom Barnes, I think the name of the host was. And the minute I heard him, I thought I have to get him on KBS. This was like, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And Ben has been coming on every month since then. I can't even think of a month that we've missed. Now, Ben is like me, only he knows a whole lot more about all the kind of paranormal, supernatural, geopolitical, you name it. Ben Emlyn-Jones has either written about it, but he's definitely got an opinion on it. And he gets into such a level of woo that it makes him one of my favourite guests to bring on to speak to all of you about all of the weird stuff that's happening in the world. And these past couple of years, been no shortage of weird stuff. So without any further ado, let's meet the man behind the hospital porters against the New World Order, Ben. Yes, indeed, brother. Yeah. How you doing, man? How you doing?
I'm pretty good, Kev. It's great to be back on again, and it's very exciting and interesting times that we're living in at the moment. I think really the world seems to be fitting itself perfectly for people like us, and there's more and more people who are going to want to listen to what we have to say. So to everyone listening, including some new listeners, well, you're about to have quite an experience.
Absolutely, and a big shout out to the audience over on TalkStream Live as well. Seem to be growing all the time over there. So hold on tight, folks, because me and Ben, we take it to other levels. And you know, they say try, and try again. But there's another word for that. Perseverance. Mars. Rover. Perseverance. We're going to be getting into all the good stuff here with Ben. And we were having a laugh on my pre-show stream because, Ben, I have been like a 10-year-old. I've been sitting watching the Twitter feed. I've been sitting watching the NASA. I've been gorging almost everything that's been to do with this new rover that has now successfully touched down on Mars. And I was showing her pictures the other day, and I went to show her another one, and she just burst out laughing at me, Ben. Burst out laughing. She's like, look at the state of you, Kev. You're like some kind of crazy child, all excited because we're in space. But I've got a funny feeling this kind of thing excites you as well. So, Ben, what's your thoughts on the Mars rover?
Oh, there's a million things I could say about it, because it's extremely significant what's going on at the moment, because the amount of attention that's being put through the news about this new lander that's just got touched down on Mars. It's like, it's not the first time that there's been landings on Mars. In fact, there's been about a dozen successful landings on Mars right now. From various countries going back to 1976 when the Viking lander touched down. But the one they have now, it seems to be getting more news attention. It seems to be getting more attention. It's pretty obvious this is very, very unique. It may look like something made by a kid out of Meccano, but the lander, the rover, Perseverance, is an extremely sophisticated vehicle indeed. And it's already shown itself to be unique among Mars missions because it's obviously so much more sophisticated because it's produced data that's never ever come from the red planet before, including motion pictures. This has never ever happened on Mars before. We've been lots and lots of photos have been sent back, never movies, video.
I mean, this is how significant it is, Ben. When you actually go to the actual Google search for the rover, you get fireworks. Look. This is how significant. You can tell something's epic when Google changed the search engine like that. But I'm like you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
I've never seen that before, Kev. I've never seen anything like that before on Google.
No, some days, sometimes, like if it's American Independence Day, they'll have like fireworks as well and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's there's a very dramatic, a very, very high quality piece of video, which is from what they call the engineering cameras on the lander and on the rocket, the rocket crane, I think it's called, the device which actually carries the lander to and then drops it by wires the last few feet. Oh, that's it. Yes, this is. I've never seen this on Mars before, and I don't think anyone else has seen anything like this from Mars before. This is an incredible thing if you've not seen it before. The way the craft comes down. There's like a rocket levitation device which lowers the vehicle gently onto the surface with wires, and then it just flies off and crashes somewhere. The vehicles work perfectly so far. The mission control have reported it's all going ahead, and so much attention's been put on this because, for reasons, well, maybe it's about to discover something very significant. Now, if it's going to discover something very significant, Kev, I use the word "discover" in quotes because they already know. I think. Wasn't
the Viking? Wasn't that the one back in the 70s or something where people argue that, like you say, Ben, life has already been pretty much confirmed. You know that. Or is this just now the public face of it? Because people like me and you know, maybe people look into space, but the general public, if you'd said to them, oh, there's been life on Mars since the 70s, they'd probably roll their eyes at us, right? But this is their way of making it the big announcement.
It's really extraordinary, actually. But if you ask the official position so far on Mars, that it is completely sterile. There's no signs of life on there, past or present. Yet the data that keeps coming back from these missions indicates otherwise. And many independent researchers not attached to NASA, such as Andrew Johnson, such as Richard D. Hall, such as Howard Joseph, who's actually sued NASA because of this. He's actually launched a lawsuit against the space agency, the U.S. Space Agency, for what he says is suppression of the truth, which is that all these missions, I think, well, certainly some of them have detected signs of life. The Viking, the very, very first successful landing on Mars. I mean, there was a Russian one which didn't work very well. It lasted about an hour, then shut down. But the first really successful landing on Mars, the Viking, there was an experiment on board that craft for detecting life. It was a very simple one, actually. Obviously, the technology wasn't as good back then as it is now. They would just dump a handful of Martian soil into a culture dish, rather like what they use at hospitals for diagnosing bacteria and things like that. And the data that came back has been dismissed as not significant. Yet other people have looked at it. I mean, these even Time Life books, they had a book I read years ago about it, and they said the actual data is very ambiguous. It could indicate life, although NASA say no, it didn't. We didn't find any life there. It could. And then there's been many, many other examples. It's too many to go into, actually, in terms of detail. For example, fossils. What looks like fossils have been found in the rocks, including there was what Howard Joseph was saying was there is a fossil in one of the rocks taken by, I think, the Phoenix lander or the Curiosity lander, which shows what a creature that resembles a crinoid. A crinoid is a marine animal. It's an entire class of marine animals, which includes starfish and sea urchins and things like that. And they say there's a type of crinoid, or what looks like a crinoid. Obviously, it's a different planet, so it's a different creature, but it resembles very closely an Earth crinoid in the rocks, and that's in the past. So it indicates that if there was life, even if there was life in the past and it's not there now, Kev, that is an extraordinary situation. But what if there's life here? What if there's still life there now? What if?
Well, then, just to jump in there, It was only last week we covered the story here about the new life forms that they had found in Antarctica. They were sponges. There was other types of creature down where they never thought that life could ever take hold. But that was a big announcement that came out last week. And of course, when you start to see life thriving underground and in conditions that we wouldn't normally associate with life being conducive to life, then that opens up a whole plethora of options. I discussed at the time how maybe on Europa, under the ice there, we would see the same kind of things we see in Antarctica. But I'm with you, brother. There's nothing, for me anyway, that rules out the fact that it could still be living stuff, albeit maybe microbial or something like that. But life seems to be very, very resilient, and it can adapt to whatever conditions it has to.
It will. I mean, once life is there, it takes hold. You can't.
Yeah.
It'll stay. It'll evolve in many different forms, and just see how many different life forms there are on Earth. Everything, all the environments, from the hottest deserts, you have camels. In the coldest ice caps, you have penguins and polar bears, and everything in between. In the volcanoes on the seabed, there are crab-like creatures and flatworms and things like that. Now, we know, for example, on Europa, there is liquid water. There's liquid water on some of the moons of Saturn as well. We know there has been, I think that refers to Lake Vostok, for example, is an incredible place on Antarctica. And on Mars, we know that there was a time in the distant past, 2 to 3 billion years ago, when Mars had a very different environment to what it had now, because there was flowing water on the surface, which means it must have had a dense atmosphere, much denser than the one it has now, and it must have been a hell of a lot warmer. Now, in other words, it was fairly Earth-like. Now, if life managed to take hold on Mars, obviously the environment changed. Probably the emergence of the big volcanoes might have changed the habitats of Mars and turned it into what it is today.
And that's a big volcano up there, right? That's a huge one.
There are many, yes. It's got some of the biggest volcanoes that we know about in the solar system that have ever been discovered. Olympus Mons, for example, is several times the height of Mount Everest. It's a shield volcano the size of France. And there's several other slightly smaller ones as well, like Elysium Mons, and then there's the Tharsis volcanoes. These would have had an enormous impact when they were active on the environment. But the life, even if, for example, the life evolved into more complex forms, maybe even a sophisticated animal species able to build things like the face on Mars, etc.
Well, this is where I went the other night, because I mean, I get why they went to Jezero crater. I get the science behind it. Looks feasible what they're saying. If there is life to be found, that's the place. I was thinking, well, if I had that Russian billionaire dude, Yuri Milner, him that's funding Avi Loeb and the mission to Alpha Centauri for like $1 billion, why don't we just take that $1 billion? And I mean, this rover that's up there, it's got a little copter that flies out in front of it, and heaps of cool stuff. Why couldn't we have built something like that and dropped it right at Cydonia, Ben? Right at Cydonia, man.
This is an important point. This is what people have been calling for. People like Richard Hoagland have been pressuring NASA into doing something like this. Send a mission to Cydonia. I mean, if there's nothing there but mountains and we've been fooling ourselves, but they'll be able to tell. However, none of the probes have gone anywhere near it. I think judging by the map, this current mission is the one closest, and it's hundreds of miles away. It could never get there. But Cydonia, the face on Mars, for example, it's not just a face, it's the structures around it, like the D&M pyramid and the city, and the crater with the strange crater with the bit cut out of the rim and things like that. That in itself means that this could be some kind of artificial structure, very, very old, something built long before life evolved on Earth beyond the microbial. There could have been sophisticated life on Mars. Now, if life developed to that sophistication, why don't they just tell us about it? Why can't you think this was exactly what every scientist would want to see? Because they all say that's what they want to find. They all say, "Oh, I'd love it if there were aliens." Well, what if there were aliens, even if they're just in the past? Why not investigate this? rather than just dismissing it without investigation, which is what they have done. I hope, I've got a feeling, Kev, things are going to change with this. I really do. It's there was the Brookings Institute way back in 1959, not long after the Sputnik launch, actually said that they actually warned against the social and impact of the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe. This is not a scientific or astronomical organization. This is a psychological think tank. It's concerned for the political, economic, and sociological effects of this. So it's possible that may well be still a policy that's in place, and they're just keeping quiet about it. They're keeping quiet about those crinoids. They're keeping quiet about the Viking experiments. But is it going to change, Kev? This is what Gareth Davis of the Mindset Podcast, is another show I do. He said something very interesting. He said, this is the one where they're going to announce that life has been found, even if it's just like ancient life. And that's going to be a step towards getting people used to the idea of aliens.
That's what I think. I mean, I don't know about the aliens part, but I think this is the change in, you know, what people are taught in schools, like the change in what the academic given authoritative facts are about Mars, right? That this is now going to be the thing. Yet now it's okay, Ben. Does that feel right? It's like something they've known. It's something that you've talked about there with the Viking. But this is now, it's time that they've decided it's time that the world can now live with this knowledge, because, like you say, whether it's aliens or there's something else coming, I keep going back to that we're on the cusp of, and we're in the midst of changing into sci-fi world. And we're going to be talking about the UFO debris and technologies during the show. But there's so much that's going to literally have this exponential curve where things explode. Technology's going to explode. It's going to get bigger and better. Our information we've got, you start to then use the AI to come up with new compounds, new chemicals, new metals, new fabrics. We're moving towards a whole new world. And for me, maybe, Ben, maybe this whole interplanetary, you know, off-world type is going to be a part of that. And to get us closer to being there, well, they can't, like you said, they think they can't come out just overnight and say, well, this is what we're doing, and drip, 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 get us up to speed, you know? But that's just my take, man.
It could be that whatever force has been holding back this truth embargo, as Steve Bassett calls it, it could be that force is now weakening. That's what I hope is happening, obviously. But I do find it interesting that all this talk about bacteria on Mars has come out at the same time as, for example, the TTSA and ATIP material, which we're going to be talking about. I know you want to talk about that as well later. And also, there's several other events that, for example, in the world of SETI. Now, I have a low opinion of SETI. Like Steve Bassett, I think it was originally planned just as a distraction. But it's still something that could be successful. It could be successful, and the success of SETI would have a knock-on effect on the idea of UFOs. It would have a positive knock-on effect on ufology. I've done a presentation called SETI and UFOs, which is all about that. And if any listener wants to watch it, it's on YouTube on my channel, where I discuss how SETI is both a distraction, or was originally a distraction, propaganda machine to stop people taking UFOs seriously. But now it's become something, it could become a tool of acclimatization to the knowledge that there are aliens, and they're not just out there, they're visiting us here. If that is a plan, if there's a plan to reveal that, then it's possible. You heard about the supposed signal from Proxima Centauri.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Now that's the nearest star to Earth apart from the sun.
And again, you see, this is I spoke to Brian Keating about this as well. I mean, it's whether it's a signal or a message, and again, we sometimes get excited by these like emissions that we get from space, and that's why, you know, I'm wondering, is it worth sending all that money and equipment to Alpha Centauri to investigate what may or may not be there? And I get there's an exoplanet there and it's doable, but like you said, we've got Mars right next door, dude, where there's ancient stuff and stuff like that that could really, you know.
Well, Yuri Milner seems to think he can bring out he can plan some kind of mission. The guy at Breakthrough Listen that picked up this strange signal, which may or may not be from Alpha Centauri, it may or may not be artificial. Because the thing about it is, though, if you're going to get to the nearest star, it's going to take a very long time indeed, thousands of years. In any publicly available space mission, I mean, leaving aside the secret space program for now, because I'm sure that's a different matter, but if they, for example, built Project Daedalus, this craft which powers itself by nuclear explosions, I think we talked about that on a previous show, even that would take 50 years to get there. So I think it's interesting, though, that there's so much attention being put on this. I wonder if someone said to Yuri Milner, look, make a big song and dance about this, whether or not you're serious. Just make a big song and dance about it, because we've got more news coming down the pipeline. I sense there's some momentum building up yet again. The same that happened just like in 2017. I sense we're heading in a particular direction. I mean, there's all kinds of other things, like History have a new documentary called Roswell, the First Witness. Apparently, this CIA guy called Ben Smith, he's found Jesse Marcel's diary, and I've not actually watched it yet, but apparently it's a very, very interesting. It's very interesting what is revealed in there. Because
Well,
that's interesting. Contemporary document.
It's going to be Brandon Fugel that's going to bring us the confirmation of communications. That's what I'm telling people out there. Write it down. It'll be something to do with Skinwalker. That'll be a big aha. That'll be another piece of the puzzle that Ben's talking about here. And one thing I want to leave the listeners thinking about as we go into the break, and we'll go back to Mars for this one. And we're talking about potential, just potential. We don't know if there's ancient structures up there, but there's things that definitely looks like it could be worthy of investigation. And then you start thinking about, our past. Where do we come from? And any time now when I talk about Mars, there's that little voice in the back of my head going, Kev, Cairo. And it says Cairo because I don't think we should ever forget that. I'm going to read something here. It comes from the newworldencyclopedia.org. You can go and check this out for yourselves, folks, right? But it's talking about Cairo, and it's called Al-Qahira. Now, it goes through the kind of where it was set up as the capital of Egypt, blah, blah. And it comes down here and it says Arab invaders established a military headquarters there in 642 CE, which became a permanent base of the Umayyads and Abbasids, and contained the first mosque in Africa. Now, when the North African Shiite Fatimid dynasty conquered, blah, 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 but it comes down here. And it says they built a new capital north of the old settlement and renamed the city Al-Qahira after the planet Mars that they say was rising on the day that the city was founded. Well, I don't know. I find that a bit weird. I think, my speculation is it's named after Mars because whoever built those pyramids, whoever came here and done that, they'd already built pyramids up on Mars. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the KBS speculation for Mars, pyramids, and Al-Qahira. I think it's weird it's named after that, Ben,
That's an interesting little coincidence, isn't it? It's like, it's interesting that what you see on Mars, I mean, Cydonia is the most famous. There's other places on Mars where you have like four-sided pyramids, exactly like the ones in Egypt. And the pyramids are still a mystery about who built them, for what purpose. There's no evidence to suggest they were just gravestones. There's no inscriptions on the walls of the chambers or anything like that. There is what looks like some kind of sarcophagus. But
hold that thought, Ben. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is out there listening, wherever you are, whenever you are. A warm welcome back to Ben Emlyn-Jones He's in the hot seat today. We were talking about Mars and Cydonia. And Ben, I would love for you just to kind of share that little factoid that maybe I hadn't heard of before when it comes to Cydonia and not Mars, or sorry, not Egypt this time, but over here in the UK. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, the mechanism behind it, I can't even begin to imagine. But there's an area of Wiltshire in England, the West Country, around the areas of Avebury, the ancient stone circle and the structure surrounding it, which appear to be a mirror, almost like a map on a 14:1 scale of the Cydonia area of Mars. Now, how that came about, I don't know, but people such as Richard Hoagland, David Percy, Mary Bennett, and many, many others have been investigating this, and they found that there are correlations. There's a list of correlations, dozens of correlations between objects on Earth and objects on Mars. How all this? That's it. All this online. That's a great website. That is. There's no analog for the face as such, but the crater. There's that crater with the gap in the wall. That's actually very similar to the Avebury stone circle, although 14 times bigger. South of that crater and south of Avebury, there is a mound. There's a barrow called Silbury Hill. It's actually the largest artificial barrow in Europe. It's from the early 3rd millennium BC, very, very old.
Holy hell, man! That's very like that spiral mound.
Well, that's exactly what it is. What's more, again, 14 times smaller, but Avebury Hill is exactly like that. What's more, the spiral mound has a spiral structure going up it, I don't know how that can be explained by natural forces. Recently, they discovered, this came after this original work was published. They found there's a remains of a spiral pathway going up Avebury, and it's thought that when it was actually in use all those years ago, it had a spiral pathway up it. There's many other correlations. Now, how this happened? How would the ancient Britons who built these structures have known about what was on Mars, etc., etc.? I mean, how could they possibly have known? I don't know. But it seems there's some kind of this link. I think does require explanations.
Ben, Emlyn-Jones. 10:33 in the UK, right? We're just at the start of the second segment of the show, and my mind. This is why I love you, man. You just kind of nonchalantly, innocently drop it into the conversation like everyone knows this. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why Ben is one of the best guests to get on. Dude, I had no idea about this. I'm sitting here now. Forget the rover on Mars. I'm going to be digging into this after the show.
Oh man, you've got there's a lot of material there to go through, mate. You're gonna have fun.
Oh, I love it, man.
It will. I thought you might have heard of it before, but obviously not. But I mean, that's okay. You can learn these things. There's a lot to learn about it.
Oh, this is the good bit about what we do, though, isn't it? I mean, this is the exciting part. I talk about dopamine and social media a lot, but it's the same when you're researching things and you find out new things, and it can be exciting, Ben, can't it?
There was a video. It used to be on YouTube. Actually, it's gone now because I think you can actually order it from the Owless website. And you can get a DVD of it from there. It's only about an hour long, but it goes through all of this material. And it's well worth watching. I think it's called the Avebury Connection.
You can't get away from. I'm sorry, but you can't get away from the optics of that. I'm going to put it into the chat room. Give me 2 seconds. It's going over to TFR now. I'm going to post you a picture of the little hill that's down near Avebury, and then I'm going to post a picture of Cydonia. There you go. So that's on there. So if I bring this up here, and then the listeners will know what I'm talking about. Down at the bottom of the picture, the spiral mound. I mean, the minute I looked at that, I knew it looked like that thing, because I used to drive past that when I lived in England. We were down there, and so I'm familiar with that little mound, that area. But you can't get away from how similar that is to that little thing.
It's not only is it similar, but if you actually overlay the two images, the map of the Avebury area and this picture of Cydonia, they fit. They fit perfectly. If you on a 14:1 scale, if you shrink the Cydonia one down by 14 times, it fits perfectly over these structures. It's astonishing. And the city area, for example, there's actually a range of hills. It's actually, there's a road that goes from Beckhampton, it goes down into Calne, and just before you get there, there's these hills. There's an old war memorial there. There's a white horse. It's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, the white horses. I remember seeing that all the time, dude. Yeah.
It's quite a recent one, I think, but there's an obelisk war memorial as well. But it's an impressive sight if you drive past it. Again, 14:1 scale. On Mars, you have these structures of the city, which include four-sided pyramids. And if you go to the southeast of that, you see what looks to be like a five-sided pyramid. It's called the DiPietro and Molinar pyramid, after the investigators who looked into it.
Yeah.
Now that, I don't think there's any structure on Earth like that.
I can't think of, because I was looking at this the other day, Ben, because we talked about Cydonia, and in my mind I was trying to think, do we have any other five-sided ones? And I had no point of reference for it at all.
It's an amazing thing. Now, there is actually a stone, there's like a monolith at the point where what looks to be some kind of entrance ramp leading up to this pyramid. It's impossible to say. These are old Viking photos, which are not very good quality. Now, the Mars orbiter, the Mars Observer probe, did fly over Cydonia, and something very, very strange happened. It sent back some photographs which were extremely poor quality. The face on Mars it looked like some cat litter. That's what it was awful. And there was people like Brian O'Leary, the NASA astronaut, actually had to. What they did was they managed to find out that they took the image from the Mars Observer and they discovered that it had been altered by a special program on the computers. They then wrote some software to reverse the effects of that program, and what came out of it was something much, much better, much, much better quality. So that's, if I was running the space program, I would drop Perseverance near Cydonia, and it could go around and investigate these things. But no probe to this by any country that we know about, at least in the public space program, has ever been anywhere near Cydonia.
That's where I would go. That's where I would go.
The fact they're not, and the fact we also have this duplicity over the Cydonia area, where the Mars Observer appeared to. It looks like someone used distortion software on the photos of that area to change how they look, to make them look more natural. That should set alarm bells ringing, Kev.
Have you ever spoken to anyone that claims to have been to Mars? I've spoken to two. I've got two of them. Have you got any? You had any conversations?
I have had conversations with people who claim to have been to Mars. I know a lot of people who do claim that.
I've had Andy Bashago on. Not too sure on his Martian story, I must admit. Now, I've also had on somebody that goes by the really cool name of Captain K. I prefer to call him Randy Kramer.
Yes.
Now, I tell you, people will go, but you little hypocrite, Kev Baker, you go after Corey Good and all the blue chicken call all the time. And I'll explain why I still stand by having Randy on the show. Now, can I confirm his story? No. But in all the years that Captain K has spoken, there's never been any new episodes. There's never been any new memories that have just been recollected when maybe his story's dying away. He put his story out, and his story's his story. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, he couldn't give a damn. But it never grows. It never changes, Ben. It's like he never comes out, I've just remembered, I remember this other mission I done. When the kind of... The attention's going away from his first story. So for me, again, it doesn't prove anything. But I still remember talking to him. And I don't know, right? I don't know. There's part of me thinks we might have something like that because of Gary McKinnon. Because Gary McKinnon, what he's seen, would suggest that there's exchanges, there's transfer of personnel between craft that don't exist on this planet. And if that's the case, then who am I to say what's really going on up there,
Well, exactly. As far-fetched as some of these stories sound, and Randy's story is quite extraordinary, there's others as well, like Robert David Steele, and there's Stephanie Ralph, and I can't remember the name of her husband.
Please don't mention Robert David Steele's name on my show, because he references his insider that he likes to call #DeepAnus.
Oh, okay. But a lot of these people are making these claims. Now, obviously, it's hard, it's impossible to prove, and it's an extraordinary thing to say. But as you just said, if there is a secret space program, and now if all the things we've learned about the development of anti-gravity and things like that in the 20th century are true, it seems inconceivable that the breakaway civilization, as Richard Dolan calls it, will not use that technology for its own purpose. And that means, of course, while we're building rockets to chug laboriously up into low Earth orbit, they're building anti-gravity craft that have hundreds of times better capabilities. They're going to use them. They're going to use them, and Mars is, on cosmic terms, is relatively close. I would not be at all surprised if people have been to Mars. I would not be at all. If the Nazi Bell, for example, was developed into a spacecraft, people would have gone there. They'd have checked it out. I mean, there may even be permanent bases on Mars, in which case they're going to have to keep NASA. Are going to have to keep Perseverance away from those as well.
Yeah,
because it would spoil the effect a bit, wouldn't it?
If only it had a rear view mirror. There's probably like a big high rise behind it or something, man. But listen, I'm watching a really good TV show just now. It's on Apple TV. It's called For All Mankind, and the first season featured, it was a space race, but with a difference. It's like we're on an alternative timeline because Russia made it there, the Americans made it there. And back then when the Apollo missions were going, they established bases. So season 2 takes you into the 80s, and there's this kind of thriving space kind of up and down to bases and platforms. And it got me thinking, you know, in that timeline, and that's the timeline I honestly think, I mean, why did everything pause and stall with space exploration for decades? I mean, it would make sense that the next step on from the moon would be Mars. So I know that's a TV show I'm referencing, and they haven't even brought Mars into it yet, don't get me wrong. But part of me wonders if, you know, in this world of breakaways or whatever you want to call it, if like we're kind of speculating, because that's all we can do. It wouldn't surprise me if one day we found out Mars got visited a long time ago, you know?
You know, absolutely. I saw the trailer for that, and I found it extraordinary. It reminded me of like these various other alternative reality type programs.
It's like The Man in the High Castle.
Yeah,
watched that one. That's a very good one. Yeah,
I enjoyed that. This is very, very similar, and it's, of course, my own books, Roswell Rising, and its sequels are along that vein. This alternative timeline kind of drama. It should hopefully get people thinking. I mean, I think that if you look at what's happened in space over the years, you find that we reach a certain point. There's the space race. When it first started, the first decade of the space race, there was the Sputnik, and there was Yuri Gagarin, and the Russians were way ahead. And then the US caught up by getting the moon landing, apparently. whether it was real or not, that's what everyone was seeing. They were seeing men walking around on the moon. And everyone projected that into the future and said, well, you know, by 1980, we'll be able to go there on holiday, and if this pace keeps continuing. And for people who were into science fiction and space in the 60s, and there were a lot of those, it was very, very popular. If they could look forward in time to the present day, they would gasp in dismay. They would say, what? Because everything seemed to stop at that point when Apollo ended. Sure, we launched more rockets. We had the space shuttle. We built space stations to sort of spin around the Earth. But it's not as exciting and dramatic as walking on another world. Of course, you go from the moon. Where'd you go from the moon? You're right. The next logical step from the moon is Mars. I mean, of course, we talked about Venus on a previous show, but they didn't know about the thing in the clouds in those days. They didn't know about the building balloons in the clouds. Then the next step is obviously Mars. In all the science fiction at that time, they were projecting forward. People like Arthur C. Clarke were projecting forward into the future based on what the progress that was made in the 60s. And indeed, in Arthur C. Clarke, he wrote in the 60s stories set in the 1990s, the early 2000s. And indeed, they do have bases on Mars, as they even have permanent colonies. And in one of his books, there's been like a rebellion in the colony, and Mars has become like a republic, and it's like, and they kicked the imperial Earth out. It's really quite extraordinary. So,
do you watch Expanse, Ben?
I haven't seen that. No.
Oh man, Expanse! You have to watch that, dude. We've got the Martians, humans on Mars. We've got the Belters. We've got the Earth, and you've got the kind of fighting in between the different factions thereof. And oh, dude, I can't believe you've not seen Expanse. It's like one of the. It's my favourite when it comes to sci-fi in the past few years. Expanse just blows it away, you know.
That's what happened on Earth, you see, when we were exploring the Earth. We set up colonies. The colonies got bigger and bigger and bigger. More people went there. Then we had empires. And then the empires rebelled. The foreign powers, the foreign colonies rebelled and became independent. Of course, science fiction authors, they project these space operas into the future. But it does require a question. It's a question that needs answering, that the reality apparently is so much more boring than the dream. Why did progress seem to stop at a certain point, like about 1972 probably, when Apollo 17 took off? And that was it. We had the space shuttle, we had space stations, but they're interesting, but they're not really very exciting. And then, of course, just unmanned space flight to other planets. I mean, agree, it's true. In terms of unmanned space flights, there's been enormous progress. That's what the Perseverance is. But there are no boots on the ground on Mars, apparently. No one's ever been there. No one's ever been to these other planets. No one's been above low Earth orbit since 1972.
I wonder
Why?
if, you know, we've reached a certain level of technology that's almost it's almost as if we've reached a level where we're maybe now we are worthy of being contacted. Maybe now we're just on the cusp of technologies that these advanced civilizations, if they are out there in space, interplanetary, quantum computing, AI, I don't know, but maybe we're just about, because we've got that now, maybe we're just about to make that leap from one civilization type to another, dude. You know?
It could be, Kev. It could be.
I mean, I don't know. It could be. We've got CERN. We're starting to like look at the very milliseconds after the Big Bang and things. I mean, I don't know how much more science we can really kind of pull out of Pandora's box, you know. So maybe maybe opening up other dimensions, you know, maybe that does it. If something utilizes interdimensional travel, maybe these craft, because like you said earlier, according to Einstein, you know, doing it by his laws takes you a long time to get anywhere, right? So maybe if these craft and these people or whatever they are using interdimensional stuff, maybe the second we cracked open other dimensions by smashing particles and accessing it with quantum computers, a light went off. Okay, then we best go and get them up to speed now.
It could be exactly that. I mean, the Kardashev scale, which we talked about before, about whether a civilization can exploit its planet, its star, or its galaxy, I don't think there's one for different dimensions. I don't think that's on there, which means we may leap straight to the top above the scale.
Well, you see, I didn't think there was either, right? But check this out, Ben. Now, again, I'll get your take on this because you know more about this than I do. But when we come down here, it says we've got the type 3, okay? Type 1, type 2, type 3. And a type 3 civilization, also called a galactic civilization, can control energy at the scale of its entire host galaxy. It says there are also 2 extended categories. A type 4 civilization called a universal civilization can control energy of the entire host universe, but the type 5, also called a multi-universal civilization, can control energy at the scale of multiple universes and may be able to create universes. And that comes from, it cites what do alien civilizations look like, the Kardashev scale, a video. It's probably somebody that's adapted it for the modern time, you know.
So there actually is now, that's interesting, there is actually a Kardashev point existing, which includes exactly that, what we were talking about. I thought it just went up the galaxy and no higher, but obviously it goes much higher. It could be that's what we are. We are exactly that. And now, because maybe we know about like the Mandela effect we've talked about before, which only emerged when CERN started smashing atoms together. At the same time, people like Professor Brian Cox with his shiny teeth were going, oh, we actually, if there's other universes out there, we'll discover them because the CERN has the power to reach them. We know it has the power to reach them.
You're good at him. You're good at him, dude. Definitely good at him. Can you play the drums like he did in D-Ream as well?
Things can only get better.
I'll tell you, that song would be awesome for like 2020, 2021, wouldn't it?
Oh, God, I hope so. It makes me cringe. Anyway.
I'm surprised nobody's actually put that out there, you know, because I tell you, it'd be apt.
But you know, this guy's. I mean, obviously, like he doesn't think there's anything wrong. Nothing can happen. He would laugh at us. In fact, he has been very, very rude about people like us. That guy.
Oh, he's probably
obnoxious.
He's probably got very angry at the shows I used to do with Anthony Patch. He's probably sat.
God,
yeah, he would have been triggered by that crap, dude. I'm telling you, he'd have been throwing things at the computer and all sorts, man.
Yeah. He's really a very unpleasant individual, I must say, which is why he's always on TV, because he's so ignorant. But he actually said, you know, he didn't think there was anything wrong. He said there's no danger really, but maybe not danger, but obviously if we are making holes in this universe towards other universes, it's going to have some kind of effect. I mean, the Mandela effect is everywhere now, and then people. I've obviously moved into a universe where Looney Tunes is Looney Tunes.
I know. I mean, that's not right.
I was so sure it was Looney Tunes.
Because it was, Ben. Don't let them get to you, man. I
remember asking my mum and dad, like when I was like 5 years old, saying, "What does that mean? What's tunes?" Yeah. And they explained what it meant. They said it's just how Americans say tunes. It's also, you know, part of cartoons. So it's kind of in American accent. It's like a pun. And I didn't. I so remember that conversation, Kev. I remember it so well. I was actually really shocked when I found out that it had always been tunes.
Oh, the worst one for me is Black Tom Island. The explosion at Black Tom Island, which was the justification for
This is the big on the ammunition dump in New York.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the year of it. Black Tom Island. Hang on. Black Tom Island explosion, 1916. This is what got them into World War One, allegedly. When I still believe it was the sinking of the Lusitania.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what the most of the world. And what's weird about this one, though, Ben, is this is one of the actual Mandela effects. It's got a ripple through time, right? Because they claim on that day it actually damaged the Empire State, not the Statue of Liberty, sorry, right?
Yeah.
And it damaged it in a way that you still couldn't go up into the flame in the 80s and 90s, right? But there's people that remember being up in the flame in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And they've got photographs of being up there. But you check it out and know, according to the new historical timeline, no. That's weird. That's very, very weird indeed. And it could be that this sort of thing is literally transforming our universe. Well, it's making us into a different kind of thing. Think about what we mentioned earlier on. Let's go full Speculation Island, folks. We're there. We've arrived at the harbour. We mentioned the men in the high castle. And the bad guys in World War II, they got a bit anti. They got a bit angry when they found out they hadn't won on every timeline, right? So they ended up accessing the other worlds to put it right. You know, now there's a lot of changes around World War II. And Black Tom Island, you go back to the First World War here, it's almost like somebody's rewriting the historical timelines where, say, in 100 years, Ben, who knows who will have won World War II? Who knows if we even had a World War One, you know?
Well, there'll be no one left who actually remembers it personally.
That's all you need, isn't it? About 100 years, you know?
Yeah.
You could change it completely.
It could well be, especially like if the Masters of Infinity, like there's David Percy, Mary Bennett called them, the people who can control all this information, have access to Kardashev Scale 5 technology, which could literally change reality. I mean, this is kind of what Man in the High Castle is about. It's because they are actually what happens in that particular series is they do make contact with the universe as we know it, and there's like people who can travel between the two. There's that Japanese guy, the old Japanese guy. He can like teleport between our world and the world of the man in the high castle. So it's an extraordinary idea,
isn't it?
It's yeah. I mean, and of course, this is going to have an effect. Maybe this is why the truth embargo is collapsing, if that is indeed what's happening. Which, to be honest, it does look like it. I mean, this is kind of what I would have predicted would happen before 2017. I would have kind of predicted that if disclosure was going to happen, it would probably happen in this way. It doesn't mean that that is actually going to happen. We're going to have disclosure with a capital D, but we're heading in a direction that would lead to a controlled situation where there'll be disclosure. I mean, the government are going to go, oh, they're going to panic. We can't just tell them and they'll panic. The governments have a horrible, really low opinion of us, Kev. They're always convinced we're going to panic about everything. But
we can handle the truth. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. We'll be back up. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker show with Ben Emlyn-Jones. I'll get Ben to give you his links in a moment, but don't forget, coming up right after today's show, it's Lucky with Quantum Connections, right here on your number one network, where silence is consent and where we give you protection from deception. Truth Frequency Radio, tfrlive.com. We've got our own chat room at tfrlive.com/chat. Head on over there. It's absolutely free. All we ask, one rule, don't be a douche canoe. So, with that said, Ben, let people know where they can keep up with the level of woo that you are able to produce, my friend.
Oh, there's a lot to keep up with, I'll tell you.
Isn't there? Isn't there?
There's a lot of material online. It's
now we've got your blog site here. So if I pull that, what's this one? Tell people about this one.
Hapanmo Voice. That's hapanmo-voice.blogspot.co.uk. Hapanmo stands for Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. That's just one of the many sites I have, and I do YouTube videos as well on Hapanmo TV. And I've written some books. If you like the material that's on the Kev Baker Show, you'll really enjoy my book, my Roswell trilogy, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, Roswell Revealed, a world after disclosure, and Roswell Redeemed, humanity after disclosure. These are not only books about the kind of subjects that Kev talks about, they're also about alternative timelines. I bring that into the plot. So do please check those out. And of course, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, at least until I get banned. And yeah, so there's many places you can look for me. Just Google Hapanmo, you'll find me.
Word on Capel Green.
I'm still in progress. I mean, I'm in touch with the production team, and it is still an active project.
At least it's still active. Then it hasn't been, as long as it's not been shelved.
No. I think the reason it's not been released is they do want like a big screen premiere. And of course, to do that, we're going to have to wait for a time when it's legal to do these things. Yeah. So the restrictions of stopping that are lifted. And then hopefully if and when that happens, I mean, fingers crossed, there'll be a big, massive premiere for Capel Green. And that's going to be quite something, Kev. It really is.
It will be.
Look forward to that enormously.
Oh, big time. Now, Ben, during the break, I was showing you the Mandela effect that we were discussing just before the break. What's your thoughts on it now? I believe you're a Lusitania type guy like me. And listen, why when Pearl Harbor, everyone refers to Pearl Harbor as being the first attack on US type soil and things, why wouldn't they have said Black Tom Island?
Well, if indeed it was what it appears to be. I mean, as we've discussed on this show many times, when these events happen, they're not always what they appear to be. There is such a thing as false flag terrorism. There's many examples of such things. It was very important at the time at the time it happened for America to take part in the Great War in Europe. I was always told it was Lusitania. Lusitania was a huge ocean liner, and it's the same class as the Titanic, and it was torpedoed by a German submarine, and there was a huge loss of life. It was off the coast of Ireland, I remember, and this was obviously an act of war against the United States by Germany. And the moment that happened, exactly like they did with Pearl Harbor, a generation later, the U.S. government says, "Look, we don't want to go to war. I told you we weren't going to have anything to do with this horrible war in Europe, but I'm afraid we've been attacked. We have to defend ourselves, which means we're now at war with Germany." And
look at this here. Look at this here. It says, although the Lusitania sinking was a major factor in building support for a war was eventually declared only after the Imperial German government resumed the use of unrestricted submarine warfare against American shipping in an attempt to break the transatlantic supply chain from the US to Britain. It goes on.
So it wasn't just the Lusitania, was it? That wasn't enough on its own.
No, exactly. It was just a major factor.
Yeah.
Meaning there was other factors, or at least that suggests. And like we say, the other one, that this is meant to be the one.
Whoever really did that, whether it was the German agents or whether it was someone else.
I mean, that would be a good film. How have we not seen that film, dude? How have we not seen that film where there's two German agents sneaking about New York and... you know what I'm saying?
Oh, right. I've not seen that film about it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If that had ever happened, you're telling me they wouldn't have made films about that by now?
Well, there may be one out there somewhere. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's possible it was a long time ago. It's possible
if there was we would know the name of Black Tom Island, though. That's my point.
I never heard about it until, I had heard about it before I came on the show, but I think it was from you on a previous show when we were talking about the Mandela effect. And obviously this is like a huge explosion, one of the biggest non-nuclear explosions. It's possible, like, if more people were killed, it might have been more famous. I don't know, but it's weird, Kev. I don't know quite what to make of it. But the thing about the Statue of Liberty, as far as I don't believe that it took that long to repair the damage, because in the 80s, in the 1980s, people couldn't go up into the light.
But we would have heard the name of it anyway, because people that tried to go up there would have said, well, we can't, because there was an explosion in 1916, something called Black Tom Island, and nobody ever came home and said that.
That's about 60 years. I mean, surely I know that a local government and is very inefficient, but they're not that inefficient. They could organise some kind of repair.
That's what I'm saying. So it didn't happen on this timeline, or at least the timeline we're from. That never occurred.
I had a friend at school who went to New York, and he said he went up the Statue of Liberty. Now, he may have been bragging, I don't know, but he said he went. This was like in 1980 something. He said, I went up the Statue of Liberty.
Well, now you have to find him and say, no, you didn't, because there was an explosion back in 1916 that calls you a liar.
Oh, well.
You see, and he'll assure you that he did, and that's the Mandela effect, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And there's many, many other examples of it. It's a very, very weird thing. Very weird indeed.
Indeed. So, Ben, let's move on to another story that I know you've written about. And that's the UFO debris, alleged UFO debris, that caused major kind of excitement in the circles that I move around in when it first came out. Is it, what's the name of the guy? Is it Bellagio? Is that his name?
Anthony Braglia.
Braglia, that's the one. So what's your take on this, dude?
Well, it's interesting because he does a very good blog, a UFO. I can't even remember the name of it. I say it's such a good blog, but this is interesting because, like, I've just done an article about this because someone sent me a link to this, and I gather this is big news everywhere. That he put in a Freedom of Information Act request from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he actually got back a result. Now, it's only 11 pages of a 154-page set of documents. So it's not that exciting, but it gives it doesn't give anything like it doesn't say, oh, these are aliens, it's from Roswell or anything like that. But it gives a list of properties of what they call metamaterials, and it's quite. I'm not knowledgeable enough to understand all the scientific jargon, but I've looked at people who've commented on this, and they are very impressed with these metamaterials. It's like some kind of weird blend of elements which you don't actually get in the forges of Earth, such as magnesium and aluminium in layers and things like that. Now, Luis Elizondo has talked about this. Several other people have talked about this. Bigelow Aerospace was one of the contractors of ATIP. which was involved in this analysis project of these particular materials. We still don't know. No one's actually come forward and said where these come from. No one's actually said anything. I mean, a lot of the headlines have been very sensational, saying, yes, Pentagon confirms alien debris. No, they haven't confirmed alien debris. If they confirm alien debris, then it may be in one of the other 143 pages of that document. I'd love to know what they were. But they were held back because they were exempt from FOIA.
Yeah, these ones, I would urge anyone to check out John Greenwald, the Black Vault. He done a kind of report on it, took some notes. And the 5 kind of things in question that Ben's on about are definitely interesting. And probably if the guy had, it would have been even better if he'd just like cut out the Pentagon admitting debris, because like Ben says, they didn't admit that. But the actual reports they got are interesting, and they're called Defense Intelligence Reference Reports. Now, they're actually unclassified, which means that they're not secret, they're not anything, but they're for internal training use only. And I think if to kind of boil down what John's saying, as opposed to potential alien debris, Ben, these reports have been known about, and he thinks it's more to do with the kind of research and development type stuff that maybe Bigelow or other contractors have been working on. Because of the classification, you know, I mean, unclassified, you'd expect surely if it was, or me, this is me talking here, I would surely expect some level of classification on that, right?
I would, obviously, these particular pages are not top secret. I mean, if there is top secret material in these 5 documents, then it has been held back because it's exempt from FOIA. So, and Anthony Bragg obviously wanted to publicise this, and he used a bit of a clickbaity headline.
Oof, it was a belter. It was a cracker.
And to be honest, it's interesting. I mean, it's not. I don't think he's being deceptive as such. I think it's false marketing.
You know,
I think it would come under the Trade Descriptions Act, but there's no fraud here.
Well, when you look at the letter he got back, this is what John explains, because he's been getting the FOIA requests for like 30 odd years since he was in school. He's been doing it. Yeah,
that's his speciality, isn't it?
Yeah, so when he read the letter, it was ambiguous. And see, when you read like the opening kind of couple of paragraphs of the letter, it does sound like there's material relating to recovered UFOs. But what John says is, he says, you can that's like copy and pasted of like several other letters. He says, I recognize this language. It's like their go-to kind of language, but it doesn't mean that what they found is in reference exactly to the UFO debris. Do you know what I mean? So I give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's not positively an admission that this is UFO debris. But having said that, I mean, the actual text reads, it talks a lot about applications. It says this would be great for aerospace because this material is like, its properties of electrical conduction and heat conduction are extraordinary. I mean, I can't help wondering if it's the kind of materials that the TTSA have been talking about, and indeed Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. has been talking about, because he handled some strange material in 1947. His father, Jesse Marcel, the Major Jesse Marcel, mentioned this too. I can't help wondering if there's a connection here. And one of the reasons I'm so interested in this is because Dr. Irina Scott has been talking about not this particular material, but other things. She's dealt with strange material at Patel Memorial Institute, and she writes about it in her book. I think it's called Hidden Corridors or something. She talks about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where, with the Roswell announcement before it all went quiet and the weather balloon story came out, mentioned Wright-Pat. It called Wright Field in those days, because that's where the technical data section was, which is where foreign material would be taken, whether it's a Russian plane or something like that, or something slightly more exotic. But Dr. Scott said that she dealt with strange metallic material. She says the elements are recognizable because, of course, elements are universal across the entire cosmos. I mean, we know from the spectrographs of distant stars and galaxies that they contain the same elements that we are familiar with on Earth. You know, copper, iron, zinc, oxygen, helium, hydrogen. But she found out that there was isotope ratios and things like that, which you can learn an awful lot about if you're a good chemist and you know about these things. You can study them at the physical property, the molecular properties, the molecular level, and the atomic level, as Luis Elizondo said. And she said that when she studied it at the atomic level, she thought she originally thought it was like meteorites or something, but then obviously she thought they didn't quite fit and these were somehow artificial. One of the jobs she did at Patel was to melt these things. She had to melt them, and she couldn't. Eventually she went to a forge in New Mexico, which has, I think it's one of the hottest in the world. I mean, the hottest one is in Russia, but this was like the second hottest forge in the world. And they managed eventually to melt this piece of metal. And they were extraordinary because they thought they could. They said they can't believe how high the melting temperature of this material was. And she said that's where she started thinking that maybe this was from an artificial structure that did not originate on planet Earth. And the fact that she had this experience, and then we found out about what Anthony Bradley and Luis Elizondo were talking about, makes me think there's a connection here. There's nothing in the document that indicates there's a connection. It could just be something else. But I do want this stuff that's too hot for FOIA, the other 143 pages, Kev. I'd give my back teeth to read those.
Yep. Wouldn't we just? And even then, would we get closer?
Who knows?
Exactly, Ben. Exactly.
We may find out. You see, if we are on the path that we talked about earlier in the program, we may be heading exactly for there. Yep. I don't know. I mean, this is what I speculate in my article. I've just written about it. Who knows?
One can but hope. Now, we mentioned metals there, and I'm going to take you in a random direction here, but I know you're the kind of guy that'll be able to go there. Watching an Ancient Aliens the other day, and it was one of the pyramids over in Mexico, and when they went underneath it, they found mercury. Now, they also talked about how in a pyramid over in China, one of the dynastical leaders over there, that he had made this kind of, his tomb had a kind of plan of the China, whatever it was, and all the rivers and all the water kind of scape was done in mercury. But they were discussing this mercury factor and the metal under the pyramid. And of course, when you go to that pyramids in South America, you've got the kind of imagery of the Pinanque astronaut, I think you call it.
That's strange. That's strange.
Yes.
Tableau, yeah.
So metals, mercury under pyramids, Ben. What on earth's going on there, man?
I don't know, Kev. I've not heard about this, but I mean, Mercury is
what?
Apparently.
Wait, you haven't heard about something? I've told you about something you haven't heard of. Oh, mark it in your calendar, ladies and gents. Yeah,
it happens occasionally.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'll dig up the story, but give me your initial thoughts why I do that.
Well, mercury, of course, is an unusual metal because in its pure form, it's liquid. I mean, obviously, it's like you can put it into alloys and things like that, but if you purify it, it's a liquid, and it's like little blobs of silvery things. You can put them in thermometers and things like that. But I don't know exactly how difficult it is to mine it and forge it and smelt it and things like that. Liquid mercury. I see. Yeah, it is liquid. So they managed to purify the metal, which is quite amazing. Now, the Palanquin thing is incredible because I think it's copper. This big tableau, it's copper or bronze, a big tableau. It's a relief. It's like a relief picture, which shows a humanoid. I think it's a man. It's a humanoid creature sitting inside some kind of structure, and it's difficult to analyze exactly what the artist was depicting, but there's like fire underneath it, as if it's some kind of rocket, and some people have interpreted this as some kind of rocket. And it's possible that there's mythology from the ancient world about things like this. There's the Vimanas. Yeah. What's funny about the Vimanas is they allegedly use mercury as a fuel.
That's interesting. And the one where the Palenque astronaut.
That's it.
Now, the pyramid I was referring to, for people out there who are probably screaming at the screen right now, it was Tiwakan. I wasn't saying that the mercury was under where this was found, but this is interesting in itself because anytime I look at this, it looks like, I don't see a spaceship, but it definitely looks like somebody operating a machine of some kind,
Yeah, there's a guy. He's on some kind of seat. He's reclining as astronauts do in rockets.
And it's important to note that actually that's the correct landscape for it. So what I'd said on a previous show is when you look at it that way, when you watch the SpaceX launches, that's actually the way that the astronauts are lying compared to the ground. They're like,
Yeah.
they're like facing up in the air on their backs, you know, and that's how that depicts that, because it's actually a portrait kind of, as opposed to the longer landscape view, you know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, without documents to explain what it means, we can't ask the artist because it's very old. It's impossible to
Get the
interpret.
time machine fired up, Ben. Get the time machine fired up, man.
I'd love to say, what is this? What's it mean? Because in the ancient world, there is mythologies which talk about aliens, creatures from other worlds. They even have names, such as the Zulus call them Mantindani. They have like the jinn in the Middle East. Well, they're more interdimensional, but they have the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven to earth. In the in Mesoamerica, these civilizations, they have their own version of ideas that the ancient, talk about Eric von Daniken, about what he discovered, about the mythologies of creatures that came down from the sky, and things like that. And it's the Vimanas of India are the most interesting because they appear to be powered by Mercury. Now, there's some people was talking about mercury vapor being used in anti-gravity. Ed Fouché, I think, mentioned this. And of course, in World War II, a certain German regime was developing strange craft, known as the Bell and the Beehive. And I think there was a connection with Mercury to do with them. There was this guy called SS General Hans Kammler who was working on this, who disappeared at the end of the war.
Convenient. Yeah.
Well, it's possible he didn't disappear. He just went. He just went to America or to Russia or to Britain and ended up working under a fake name.
Well, check this out. I don't know if you've seen this. I've had this in a folder, but this is really cool. This is a scientific paper from 2015. Mercury propulsion system in Vedic Vimanas and modern spacecraft. It's from Professor and Head, he's called Shivanandam. It's something Shivanandam. He's a professor at, I can't even pronounce the place. Probably Sri Lanka, we'll say, right? But it says here, abstract. Ancient Indian culture 7,000 years ago knows how to create Vimanas to traverse the sky and beyond using a technology that NASA is still trying to harness today. There are many books and websites which forcefully and passionately assert that technologically advanced aircraft and spacecraft were in common use over the Indian subcontinent thousands of years ago. The sources also claim that the advanced space propulsion technology being researched by NASA is in fact directly inspired by ancient flying machines. The references mentioned from Vedic texts such as the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Srimad Bhagavatam, I think, whole heap of different books, the Mahabharata, I know that one, the Valmanika Shastra, and the Samaranga, and it's all these sites that Vimanas can fly in air, water, and land. They mention various propulsion, including Mercury propulsion, and that's what I was really wanting to bring it up for. But they're used for, let's see, there's designs for material selection, manufacture, operation, spacesuits, food, tackling enemies, becoming invisible, etc. And it goes on to say that this Sanskrit scholar has designed and constructed an aircraft based on Vedic principles and demonstrated the first unmanned flight. So it goes through this whole kind of thing. You can see the whole kind of paper where you can go through it. It's pretty interesting stuff, man.
It does indeed. I mean, I didn't realise that people are actually researching this in the non-secret space program world.
I didn't. When you said Mercury and the Vimanas, I didn't really think many people were onto this, and I knew I'd read this a couple of weeks ago, and it was in my UFO folder. So I thought I'll pull this out here. And listen, when I brought up the Mercury under the pyramid, I didn't think we were going to go this direction. So this is pretty cool, man, that it's making sense to you.
It's handy that it's good. This flow of information seems to be going in areas where we can have these documents that you've been looking at. I didn't know that in the non-secret space program world there were people who were trying to develop this stuff. I really didn't know. I mean, that's extraordinary. And the thing is about these. This is like the ancient aliens, ancient technology stuff that includes the pyramids that we were talking about before, that no one really knows how they were built, who built them, and for what purpose. The Rig Veda is I think is the oldest of the Vedas, and it's extremely old. No one knows how old, but it predates the written languages that we know of in India today, like
That's
the Sanskrit
insane.
texts.
That's insane.
It may well come from a verbal tradition that dates back millennia older, and India it's an incredibly old and dark nation that goes back so far. It goes back so far into the past that it's unbelievable. And even even the Indians, the modern world, even the scholars don't really know everything that happened in that nation's past, except these stories. And indeed, have you heard about the temple where there may be something in this secret chamber under it? That's quite something, that is.
Now, hold that thought. Hold that thought, then. We'll come back on that after the break. And don't forget, coming up after today's show, Lucky with Quantum Connections right here on your #1 network. And like I say from time to time, do me and yourself a favour and try listening to a new show this week. 33 to choose from. We'll be back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm just smiling here. I was looking at the little graphic I put together for tonight's show with Ben Emlyn-Jones. I don't know, there's something about that little alien. I don't know, he just seems to have a bit of attitude. Found a new alien for the art. I'm liking this one. I can work with this one. Yep, loving it, loving it. Ben, I love when we get together. I call them the Ben X Files. Because this is all the topics that I love to hear you getting into. Before the break, I'd randomly taken you into ancient archaeology and Mercury, and blink of an eye, you were there with me, and now you're going to take it further, right? Because you were talking about something during the break, and I'm going to hand it over to you to learn more about a secret society of like, come on, tell me more, man. Is it like killer? Is it like ninja monks?
It's a bit like that. They're called matrikas. This is like a secret society, a closed order of Indian priests, and they are centered around this amazing place, one of the most extraordinary buildings ever constructed. It's called the Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that word, but it's in Trivandrum, which is in Kerala on the southern coast of India. No one knows exactly when it was built. There's records dating back to the 9th century. It's dedicated to the Lord Vishnu, the centerpiece of the Hindu pantheon. And what's really remarkable about it is it has underground vaults. They call them kalaras. And in the deep foundations, 20-foot thick stone foundations of the shrine, there are 6 vaults, A, B, C, D, and F. They're called, and they have names, but that's how they're known about. Now, there's always been a strict code of silence about what is inside these particular vaults. The matrikas know what's inside some of them, but they don't speak. It's like the Freemasons; they just don't talk about it. The king, that is the Maharaja of Trivandrum, actually owns the temple, and has always respected the secrecy of the order. However, he was sued, but a lawyer actually sued the king in the Kerala High Court. And which meant that the inspectors went into the temple and demanded that some of the vaults were opened. And in 2011, there was an official opening of vaults C, D, E, and F in front of a committee. It turns out that there was a huge hoard of gold coins, jewelry, statues, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, huge, enormous amount of historical and monetary wealth there. It's incredible. And there's all kinds of really, it's going to be an amazing thing for historians to go through. And then Vault A was opened after that, and it contained something very similar, but they haven't actually counted all of that. But Vault B has never been opened, and even though they've got a court order allowing them to open it now, they've sort of halted back about opening this particular Kalara. It's called the Mahabharata Konathu Kalara, and it's supposedly the most mysterious of all the vaults. The others were opened occasionally by the matrikas. This one has never been opened in living memory. There's no records that it was ever opened. It's sealed shut. There's a heavy cast iron door without a hatch. It's amazing decorations instantly. It looks like something from Indiana Jones. This is literally like an Indiana Jones thing, and the decorations on the door are incredible. But there's no latch. It appears like it's sealed, and you need like a blowtorch or explosives. Which
There's even a story here about in the 30s that there's a gang of people went in there trying to siphon off the belongings from Vault B, and they failed in their evil mission as a result of the immense and noxious snakes that came in their way out of nowhere. But this place is, it's literally, dude, this is something, man. And I've seen one headline, even rumours that it could be up to 1 trillion worth of loot that could still be up for grabs somewhere in there, man.
It's almost impossible to know because there are no records of it ever being opened. Obviously, it was built at some point and something was put in there. But what if there's something in there which is related to what we've been talking about with the Vimanas and Mercury and things like that?
Oh, priceless, dude. Yeah.
I can't help wondering. I mean, it's just on the other side of this door. It reminds me of the Aurora Cemetery in Texas where the alien was buried. It's literally just the mystery could be solved simply on the other side of a door.
Well, but, I'm thinking, right, because we had those interesting characters back around the 30s and 40s that went around the world like Indiana Jones. They went over to Asia. They went to the Eastern world to retrieve ancient documents because they were claiming to be after ancient technology, right? They went all over the world. They got their documents. Now, if I was making a book or a film, I would say that, boom, they did find information there. And then they put it into work at something called the Glocke, the bell. I might even throw in Roswell, because it's a fictional piece of work, and say that it was actually some kind of test flying saucer craft there. But anyway, regardless of that, I think I would definitely have the liquid mercury aspect under temples, ancient temples. Oh, I can see where this story's going. But you know what's interesting about most of this story is it's all based in fact. And you do have to wonder, did those bad guys from World War II get some of that information that led them to this? You know, Ben?
Well, it's very often a lot of truth is told in fictional form. And the first Indiana Jones film, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, is about that. This particular German regime was doing exactly that, going around the world, so like you described. And this actually did happen. They went to Tibet, they went to the south of France, they went everywhere looking for artifacts. The Holy Grail they were looking for the Spear of Destiny, and indeed the Ark of the Covenant. And this is actually what the film is about. Now, as you know, sorry for the spoilers, but it doesn't end well for these guys, because they try to use this particular weapon as a weapon, and unfortunately, it's perfectly capable of. It's intelligent, this object, and it's perfectly capable of attacking anyone who tries to abuse it. And indeed it does. And it's a very gruesome scene at the end of the film. It does exactly that. So I understand why they're holding back, even though they have the court order. Then there's a little bit of trepidation here because of the stories about the mysteries of the temple, and the fact that if they did open it, there could be something in there extremely dangerous. That could be dangerous for God. No one knows. It's a complete mystery. And so I think these things have to be approached with enormous caution. It's an incredible place. I mean, there's an incredible amount of history in there and prehistory, but it's not necessarily safe. However interesting it might be, however much we might want to solve this mystery, we've got to proceed with caution. I mean, there's so much evidence to suggest that it's possible that these guys did actually come across some kind of ancient information, not from that temple, but from somewhere else. Now, there was a German U-boat was captured in late 1945. It had been on the run since the end of the war. And it was trying to transit the Straits of Malacca, and the Royal Navy in Singapore managed to intercept it, force it to the surface, and captured it. They arrested the crew. Now, this submarine, this U-boat, had in it several barrels of mercury, and which means that the regime had gone to a huge amount of trouble to preserve certain elements of itself. I mean, there's all kinds of rumors about old Mr. H, the leader, living in various places in South America, even Antarctica.
Definitely not rumors. I mean, I think they were there. And
he didn't die in Berlin.
So,
He didn't die.
So do you think then? I mean, think about this, and just thinking about this as you're speaking, though. If we look at the actual pyramid down there at Tiwakan, this is actually one of the better pyramids for me to make this speculation, because it's often been one of the things I think about, and I'm not the first person to say this, don't think I'm saying that, but almost when you look at some of these pyramids, particularly the ones in South America where they've got almost square tops and surfaces like platforms where you could land on it. I mean, are we talking about somewhere where Vimanas or spacecraft would land and take off? And if we are, right, then what do we often see happening with our modern aircraft today? Big fuel depots under runways and trucks coming in and refueling them. But this is basically like an underground thing that's got the fuel, the potential fuel that Ben's talking about, in a chamber underneath it that could be there for accessing when things come and go. Speculation Island, Ben. There you have it. There you have it.
But it's an incredible place, this place, Tiwakan. I mean, Graham Hancock has talked about it. It's still not known what its purpose is for, like so much to do with these ancient civilizations. They leave behind these incredible stone constructions without any real information about the builders, whoever they wanted to build it. I mean, this thing is like about 3,000 years old. Is it some kind of spaceport? I mean, I read Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken, long before I really got into this sort of thing seriously. And I think he mentions, I don't know if he doesn't mention Mercury, but he mentions these kinds of places in the American civilizations from the past. And he talks about their legends of being visited. He talks about the Nazca lines, and about how these are like drawings. They're actually earthworks on the ground that can only be seen from up in the air. It's only literally, people didn't even know what they were until the 20th century dawned and we invented aircraft that could fly above them.
Can I ask you, have you read this book? This is a book I've heard people on my Discord talking about. God Flies a Flying Saucer.
No, I haven't. It looks interesting.
And when you actually look into it, I think it came out not too long. I know it's got a date there, right? But I think it originally came out not too long after Von Daniken. But I'd heard people talking about it. I know our very own Luna and Jules, I think they've ordered this book, actually. But I was wondering if you'd maybe read it, because it was a new one on me, but it seems to be along the same lines, Ben,
I haven't read this, no, but it's an interesting, intriguing title. God Drives a Flying Saucer by R.L. Dion. I don't know this author.
No.
But this idea that there were deities in the past which link into what we today call aliens.
1969 book.
Yeah.
It says during World War II, he was a paratrooper in the European theatre. He obtained a BS degree. That sounds bad. From the University of Maine.
Skeptics will make lots of jokes about that.
So he's wrote God Drives a Flying Saucer, and his later book is God Supernatural, the 3,000-year misunderstanding. Sounds like he only done 2 kind of books. So God Drives a Flying Saucer, here's the key points here. It says, God is not supernatural, but is a technologically advanced UFO not. The angel Gabriel hypnotized Mary and injected her with a hypodermic needle with God's sperm in it. Jesus was born by artificial insemination. Extraterrestrial visitation from aliens is common in both Old and New Testament. Ezekiel's visions were hallucinations caused by UFOs. UFOs are God's messengers. God is immortal through technology. Oh boy, that's going to be controversial.
That's what the Raelians say, yeah.
Heaven is a super technological society. All miracles are to be explained by flying saucer technology. And the human brain is akin to a radio. It can receive and emit electromagnetic signals. And the star over Bethlehem was a luminous flying saucer.
The sons and daughters of the gods. And I just kind of wondering if there's some truth behind it.
Now, do you see me again now? No?
I can't. I can see your logo, but not you.
I'll get that going again for you on the break,
No,
Ben. We'll get that on the break.
No problem, mate. Well, I think we're nearly at the end
Yeah,
now.
we are. I forgot. You see, that
Time
is how
flies.
quickly the show has gone, brother. That is how quickly
Yeah.
the show has gone. So, what else have you been looking into since we last spoke? What else has been happening with you, man?
Well, there's this extraordinary thing which you actually just sent me, which is that, and I've heard of this theory before, but the Loch Ness Monster, we keep coming back to it, don't we? The Loch Ness
Yes,
Monster.
I forgot. On you go.
What kind of creature is it? Now, very often people report it as being a fish or a shark. It's often depicted as a reptile. Some people say it's a plesiosaur, an ancient dinosaur, which an aquatic lizard, an aquatic reptile that looks very much like reports of Nessie. But there's a new theory that it might be an archaeocete. An archaeocete is actually a mammal. It's an aquatic mammal, very similar to a whale. In fact, it's an ancestor of the whales and dolphins, the cetaceans. And these evolved from land animals, starting off there was something called Ambulocetus natans, which was like a sea lion or a seal-like creature with a long neck. And eventually, it was like amphibious. It could go on land or in the sea. It could swim and come out on land, just like seals and sea lions do today. But then it eventually lost the ability to go onto land. It spent so much time in the water, it eventually didn't bother coming out onto land again, and slowly but surely evolved into a fully aquatic creature. And there's a theory that this is what Nessie is. I don't know. Obviously, if it is just like as if it's a reptile, it's an air breather, not a water breather. It doesn't have gills, it has lungs, which means that it would have to keep surfacing to breathe. But if it had a long, thick neck, it could just stick its head out the water and breathe. In fact, that's what the experts believe that they evolved long necks for, the reptiles and the ancient whales, was so they could just stick their head above like a submarine's periscope.
Yeah, I mean,
they could just stick their head above the water, breathe, and then dip down without exposing the entire body.
I must admit, Ben, listen, last year when that Australian cat came up with the eel theory, that made me really angry, right? Because how on earth you can take eel DNA and then provide it as evidence of Nessie, fully in the knowledge that eels also live in that loch anyway. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But today, when I seen this one, yeah, I'm liking this, dude. I'm definitely more on board with this being a potential. I'm not saying that I'm like all in on it. I like it. Good thinking. Serpentine whales.
It's possible it is. Yeah, it's actually a prehistoric whale, an ancestor of the whales that somehow survived. It's a living fossil. I mean, again, it's we keep coming back to the Nessie, and it's an amazing thing.
I'm still going for interdimensional creeper and lurker, man. Right, it's a Kelpie, dude. It's a shapeshifter. I'm telling you, sometimes it takes on the appearance of a man with cloven feet. Sometimes it appears as a monster in the loch. And there was even a claim of a Bigfoot near Inverness recently. And this is the most bizarre story ever. Guy walking through woods just outside Inverness towards Elgin, and all of a sudden he gets hit in the back of the head with a fish. Now, yes, indeed, when he turned round, he said he heard something that must have been massive running away. Wasn't the first time he'd felt something there, but the first time he wrote it off has been nothing. Now, others are trying to debunk this by saying maybe an osprey or a bird dropped a fish. Hey, it can happen, so I'm not saying it's totally out of the question. But a Bigfoot near Inverness, dude. And only the reason the guy knew, whacked with a fish. That's what makes it pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you know Deborah Hatswell and her research.
Heard her name, don't know her, though that'd be,
She's been researching encounters like this across Britain for a long time.
Who was the woman that spoke at our conference in Glasgow? Do you remember?
Charmaine Fraser.
Charmaine Fraser, that's the one.
She actually, this happened in Angus in Scotland, actually. When she was a little girl, she recalls specifically seeing a large Bigfoot-like creature near a farm where she was staying with a member of the family. And when the family investigated, she ran back and told her parents when they investigated, they found footprints. It's an extraordinary idea that somehow something like the Bigfoot...
Well, I'll show you this as well. I'll get your take on it, right? Because I'd kind of written this off as being bogus. But there was footprints in Glasgow that have been spotted as well. I bring this up here and I'll send a picture to the audience in just a moment. Oh, I need to get this very quickly, bring this up. 2 seconds, we'll get that there. Let's see, where is it? Don't know if I can get it. No. There it is. So, this says, Glasgow Bigfoot snow prints spark West End wildlife mystery. Now, there's the picture in question. And at first glance, when I seen it, I laughed, because I know that Anne had a pair of slippers that looked like this. And a lot of women in Glasgow had these slippers that were kicking about, like animal feet. But then
I can't see it, unfortunately, Kev.
That's right, you can't see. I'll send you the picture here. But Bill Bean, he actually pointed something out very interesting yesterday. That picture looks like it potentially has 6 toes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count 6 forward-facing digits. Yes, but I can see the pads. I would say that's like a big cat of some kind. However, the 6 toby cats have. Yeah, cats have 5. They have like 5 toes, like we do. I think most creatures do actually, and unless it has like polydactyly, because there is a condition where an abnormality where you have extra fingers and toes. Some humans have those. But yeah, I'd say that's a big cat's paw. Obviously, there's no scale on here, so I can't really tell.
There's a scale somewhere. It's far bigger than a foot. A woman's got her foot by it, and it's sizable, dude.
It's not a domestic cat if it's very big.
No. It's bigger than your average woman's foot.
That's a big mean cat then, isn't it? Like a lion or a leopard or something.
Wandering about in the West End of Glasgow.
Oh, all right.
That's comforting.
Yeah, but people have found these. It's actually been proven. I mean, they've got like hair and things from pumas, jaguars.
Hey, Ben. You honestly think that Smart City Glasgow, with our state-of-the-art Israeli spying, CCTV system, that they wouldn't have spotted this giant cat out and about? Come on now. You try to suggest
it must be somewhere, yeah.
Are you trying to suggest our smart city isn't that smart? Are you?
I wish I could say that, Kev, because then you'd have a little bit of privacy. But that's obviously, if there may be CCTV footage of it, or if there is, I don't know if you'll ever get to see it, because...
Oh, take a drink, ladies and gentlemen. Take a drink.
Get down in one.
Ben's
on.
Come on. Yep, there was people in disco saying, ask Ben if he wants to come and talk with us after the show. I said, we're lucky Ben stays out of his bed to come on the show.
That's really nice of you guys, but unfortunately I'm going to have to go to bed after the show. But,
yeah. So anything planned coming up, any radio shows you're on you want to promote, dude, get it out there now, man.
Well, they're the Mindset Podcast. I've recorded a new episode of the Mindset Podcast. They're going to Mindset Central. I've also been on Tony Topping's show, which I can't remember what the title of it is. The podcast has hopefully been...
That should be a food show. Did you call it Tony Topping's show? That should be a cake show or something, man.
It's a tricky name, isn't it? That is his name.
I like
he's
the
a
name.
Chap.
That's cool,
really
dude.
Nice chap. He's a great guy. He's extraterrestrial experiencer and covers a lot of the same subjects we do. That should hopefully be up pretty soon. And also Soma Ara, I've been on her show too. Soma Ara is better known as Carol Noonan, and she does Pleiadian channeling, and I've been on her show too, talking about kind of the things that we talk about.
Nice.
I don't know where the podcast is for that, but I did post a link to it at some point. So
nice.
Quite a lot there for you to get through if you're interested in my radio interviews.
Ben Emlyn-Jones is a wealth of information, folks, and if you haven't checked him out yet, please do. If you're in the UK, he'll be speaking at a conference near you very, very soon. It'll all be back open, and Ben will be out there blowing minds like he did with me tonight.
I'm also available online. If you want to book me to speak online at any of your events, I'll do it, and it won't cost you anything because I only charge for like travel and accommodation, which is not an issue if you book me for doing an online event.
See, look at that, eh? What a guy! He's got it all, folks. Ben Emlyn-Jones. Check out his website at Panwo. So I'll be back tomorrow with Nano Girl tomorrow night. Stay tuned. Lucky coming up after the break. Wherever you are, make it TFR.